If you're interested in reading an easy book put together really well that reads easy and that'll help you grow, give you practical tips, and give you advice on how to grow your business, how to grow personally, how to grow your finances, how to grow your health, and just practical ways to make better decisions using wisdom, then the book Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss is a must read. I picked this book up, I think around 2016, and since then, this book it's chock full of practical things that I was able to put into practice and more than double my income as an employee and help our company go from revenues of just over 3 million to just under 100 million in about a 10-year span. And a lot of it came from this book. The structure of this book is super simple. It's broken down into 3 sections: health, wealth, and wisdom. In fact, he calls them healthy, wealthy, and wise. And Tim Ferriss runs a podcast and he interviews all kinds of super successful business people, world-class athletes, as he calls icons, billionaires, and he talks about the habits and the routines of these people. So it kind of is spread out in a way that is like a catalog. In fact, I wrote down here, it says this book is comprised of 3 sections: healthy, wealthy, and wise. There's tremendous overlap across the sections as the pieces are interdependent. In fact, you could think of the 3 as a tripod on which life is balanced. One needs all 3 to have any sustainable success or happiness. Wealthy in the context of this book also means much more than money. It extends to abundance in time, relationships, and more. In fact, in the beginning, he says, hey, you can just go straight to a specific section if you're interested in it. You don't have to read it from cover to cover like a normal book. And there's 6 quotes that I'm going to share with you that really helped me double my income and help our company have significant, stable growth over the last 10 years. And the first quote says, investing in yourself is the most important investment you'll ever make in your life. There's no financial investment that'll ever match it, because if you develop more skill, more ability, more insight, more capacity, that's what's going to really provide economic freedom. It's those skills that really make that happen. And it says, this echoes what Jim Rohn famously said: if you let your learning lead to knowledge, you become a fool. But if you let your learning lead to action, you become wealthy. And I love that, because wealth, when you learn something, if you don't put it into practice, it's not going to do you any good. In fact, the Bible says knowledge puffs up, or basically it means it swells your head and you become prideful. And when you become prideful, you're about to fall. That's a principle in the Bible. Pride comes before a fall. But if you learn and you put action to it, you become a doer of what you're learning, then you become wealthy. And that's what this book has. It is chock full of just practical things that you can do in your life, and it is the routines and the habits of successful people that have gone ahead of us to do it. The next quote says, so if you're planning to do something with your life, if you have a 10-year plan of how to get there, you should ask, why can't you do this in 6 months? Sometimes you have to actually go through the complex 10-year trajectory, but it's at least worth asking whether that's the story you're telling yourself or whether that's the reality. And what that was saying is, it was an eye-opener for me, as if I'm trying to achieve something and I'm going to say, I think it's going to take 10 years to do it, what would I have to do to actually make it come to pass in 6 months? Is it even possible? And he talks about a specific example in here. He said, if you're wanting to buy like a vacation home and you're also wanting to like buy a Ferrari, like that's your goal, and that's going to cost $1 million. So instead of taking 10 years to save up $1 million to buy a vacation home and a Ferrari, he says, what can we do to make that come to pass in the next 6 months? And the whole quote, the whole process of this is to get you to think outside the box. And most of us, we just think a certain way. We just think down a certain path. And that's why reading and hearing what other successful people have done will expand and allow you to think differently. And that's one of them. And going back to that example of like buying a vacation home and having a Ferrari, how does that come to pass in 6 months? Well, he said, just think about it. If it costs $1 million to do that, what if you could finance $1 million? What would that payment be? And he said, if the payment is like $10,000 a month, so, well, what can you do the next 6 months to make an extra $10,000 a month? So rather than thinking of how can I save, $1 million over 10 years, what could I do on the side? What kind of business could I create that is going to give me $10,000 a month extra? And if I can get $10,000 a month extra, then I literally can finance this lifestyle that I'm putting off on hold for 10 years. That was the example he used, and I just thought, that's good thinking there. Not necessarily the financing part, but just, hearing and reading things that are outside our normal thinking. The next quote that I highlighted on here says, capitalism rewards things that are both rare and valuable. You make yourself rare by combining two or more pretty goods until no one else has your mix. At least one of the skills in your mixture should involve communication, either written or verbal. And it could be as simple as learning how to sell more effectively than 75% of the world. That's one. Now add to that whatever your passion is, and you have two. And because that's the thing you'll easily put enough energy into to reach the top 25%. If you have an aptitude for a third skill, perhaps business or public speaking, develop that too. He says it sounds like generic advice, but you'd be hard-pressed to find any successful person who didn't have about 3 skills in the top 25%. And what I thought of is I come from an aviation background. I know how to fly airplanes. I know about aviation, but that's about it. And the company that I came to and the company that I still work in today, it's an aviation company. But if I wanted to leave aviation and go into a completely different industry, I feel like I had no skills. I didn't know what I was good at other than aviation. So this quote got me to think okay, what else is there? And as the company grew, I realized that I was a decent manager, and I started reading business books and leadership books. So I found out that, I had the skill of I was a reader, and I could manage. So I really started going down this road of trying to be the best manager out there, being the best reader out there, reading more than others in my company, so that I could grow, so that I could expand. And the interesting thing here, which I highlighted this probably 8 years ago, is where it says your mixture should involve communication. And here's the thing, when I came into this job, I only knew aviation, but being in the habit of reading specific books, business and leadership books, I picked up skills that I can now use in other industries. I'm not hemmed into just aviation. I literally could go in other industries and apply what I've learned. I picked up some skills. And the third skill that I'm working on is communication. And what's interesting is I came across a guy on YouTube about 3 years ago, Myron Golden, and he talked about the levels of wealth. And the levels of wealth look like this. So he had the first level of wealth is Implementation. Implementation. So implementation is where your wealth, your money is made by what you do, like your physical, by showing up, by you doing the work, by trading your time for money. That's implementation. And he said that is the foundational level of wealth. The next level is unification. Unification is where you are managing other people. You're managing people that are implementing. Now you're still trading your time for money on here, but it's the next level of wealth on there, managing people. But the third level, getting to the third level, Myron talks about, and I can totally see it, it's communication. Communication, that is the third level of wealth. So the first level is you're trading time for money and you only get paid for what you do. Unification, you're trading time for money, but you're getting paid for what you can get others to do in a unified way. But the third level, communication, this is where wealth can go off the charts. And he talks about, like, writing a book is a form of communication. You do the work once, and then the book can sell. It can sell while you're sleeping. It's not based on trading time for money. Creating a video like this, I'm doing the work one time to create this video, and it's going to live on forever. And this video is going to be played and run when I'm sleeping. And that, when you get to the level of communication, getting paid to speak, getting paid to write, getting paid to communicate, is the next level of wealth. And that's what the quote that I highlighted over 8 years ago was on there. Your skills should be a mixture, should involve communication. This is how I literally have doubled my income since I started reading this book. I became a better implementer. I started picking up skills that I didn't have. I became a better manager. I started to work on the unification side of things, getting other people to help do work. And now I'm working on the communication side of things. The fourth level of wealth is imagination, and it's about using all of those levels to create extraordinary wealth. But this all started from this quote in this book by reading. The next quote is something that when we implemented what I'm about to read here, this literally is how I was able to break free from not having to be the guy tied to everything that went on with the company. I started to get vacations back. I wasn't getting hounded during vacations. I wasn't getting hounded after hours. I wasn't getting hounded on the weekends. And you as a business owner, or you as a manager, like this technique here, this book and this practice is how you buy your time back. And the quote here is from Ramit Sethi. And it says, Ramit and I are obsessed with checklists. And I love the book by Atul Gawande titled The Checklist Manifesto. The Checklist Manifesto book is a book that absolutely, is a book that absolutely changed how we do work. I highlighted this. It says, I had this book, The Checklist Manifesto. I had this book on a shelf in my living room, cover out as a constant reminder. Atul Gawande is also one of Malcolm Gladwell's favorite innovators. Ramit builds checklists for as many business processes as possible, which he organizes using software called Basecamp. Now we don't use Basecamp. I use a very similar product called Asana. And when I read this, I bought the book right off the bat, the Checklist Manifesto, and I started to implement checklists in the company. And I also got the software Asana, and Asana and checklists put together is how you buy back your time. You literally can duplicate yourself. You literally can create checklists and items and tasks for people to do so that the client gets the exact same experience every single time. There's no mistakes. The client is getting good service. You're providing a good product, a good service, and it happens without you. But it happens without you because you have a bunch of checklists and they're in software called Asana that's web-based. It's duplicatable. There's templates. It literally has taken us from a couple million in revenue all the way to almost 100 million. These two items right here. And it came from the book, Tools of Titans. No wonder the people on here are billionaires and world-class business people. That's the power of reading a book. That's the power of reading from people that are successful, is that you can pick up habits and routines that they do and implement them in your life. The next quote says, trying to get everyone to like you is a sign of mediocrity. You'll avoid the tough decisions and you'll avoid confronting the people who need to be confronted. That's a quote from Colin Powell. And honestly, like as you grow, as I've grown, I've had to deal with more and more people. I've had to deal with more and more people at work. And one of the I don't know if it's character flaws or how I'm naturally, how my DNA is I'm a people pleaser. And I realize that if I'm trying to get everyone to like me, it's a sign of mediocrity. And if you are the same way, if you're a people pleaser and you're not addressing people, what happens is you're going to have people that are operating in a mediocre way, and they're going to be putting out a mediocre product. And your client is going to be experiencing something that's just mediocre. And nobody wants to buy a product or experience a service that's just mediocre. But to break that habit, you have to get in a mindset where you're not trying to get everyone to like you. And this also led me to a book called Radical Candor, because Radical Candor really talks about managing people in a way where you're direct and you're respectful, but you're not being a people pleaser. And so this book, this quote really helped on that. The next quote says, a person's success in life can usually be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations he or she is willing to have. Again, as your company grows, as you grow, as you become a manager, you're going to have uncomfortable communication. You're going to have uncomfortable conversations with people. Because as the leader, you have to set the tone. You have to make decisions. And if you're people pleasing and you're just taking the path of least resistance where you don't want to deal with somebody's poor performance, bad attitude, you're not gonna grow. But when you get into the habit of having what could be uncomfortable conversations, that's when change really happens. And I remember one of the first times I had to let somebody go, it was really uncomfortable. It was one of the most uncomfortable conversations I ever had. But after I let that person go, we instantly started to go in a trajectory that was up. And it set the tone. It let people know that because I was willing to have that uncomfortable conversation, it kind of set the bar higher on there. And since then, I've had lots of other uncomfortable conversations. But truth is, sometimes when you have uncomfortable conversations, they turn out to be a lot more positive. A lot of times people, they don't know that they're acting in a way that isn't good, isn't nice, that their performance was slipping. They don't know the impact of their behavior. So, but it takes a manager, it takes somebody who's not afraid to have an uncomfortable conversation to address it for change to happen. And lastly, there's one product or there was a product or something that, I don't know, it was a piece of, I guess it was a piece of software, a practice that I heard over and over again in here. And there was a specific section by a guy by the name of Phil Lieben, and he is the founder of Evernote. And Evernote is a note-taking app. And what I did is I started to use Evernote to document things, to highlight things. In fact, Tim Ferriss says he uses Evernote as his own habit of storing ideas digitally. Tim Ferriss described Evernote as his external brain for capturing information and ideas. And that mindset, the philosophy behind Tools of Titans, is a collection, an index, and a reuse of insights. That's what the book is made up of. The book is made up of a collection or an index of insights. And we can do the same thing. I started to do the same thing. I got Evernote and started keeping track of things that jumped out at me when I was reading. Because you can read a book and it's like your mind isn't made to remember everything that you read. But when something jumps out at you, if you can capture it, and you can capture it digitally, and then you can get to it where you have access to it, it is going to propel you in your, in your career. It's going to free up your brain where you don't have to remember anything, but you want to be able to access this information down the road. In fact, I've got the notes that I have on here. Evernote is something where you can capture ideas immediately. You can keep systems for recall. You can treat knowledge like an asset. So when I'm reading with Evernote, I have the ability to capture a thought. I have the ability to organize it. Then I can search it and I can apply it, and then I can grow from it. And now I use not just Evernote, but I use several other tools to help me with capturing, organizing, and applying. Another one is Readwise, readwise.io. I started reading with a Kindle, and a Kindle is where you can highlight with your finger. And when you have Readwise and you highlight a passage, it then syncs it to Readwise, and it stores it in a really organized way that's easily searchable, that's on your phone, on your computer. And now you have like these digital assets of highlights from that book. You can also put notes in them. So not only do you have the highlight, but you can put a specific note about what that meant on why it jumped out at you. And that has been a complete, game changer in my life. Over the last, 8-9 years, I've read well over 100 books. I have every single book that I read. I have all the highlights from that. And now I have a database of several thousand highlights that I can search and use. And it helps me just make better decisions, be a better manager, be a better implementer, and help me be a better communicator. But all of this started from this book, Tools of Titans. And so that's why I recommend, picking it up. If you pick this up, it'll help you in the areas of health, wealth, and wisdom. So hope you got something out of this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.